Welcome to the demonstration for configuring Vault storage. This demonstration reinforces the concepts covered in Lesson 4 of the Enterprise Vault 10 for Exchange Administration course. Before any archiving can take place, the storage locations must be defined. The storage in Enterprise Vault consists of our following objects: Vault Store groups, Vault stores, and Vault Store partitions. In this particular environment, we're going to create one Vault Store group with two Vault stores within that Vault Store group. Additionally, one partition is going to be created for each one of the Vault stores. In the first part of the demonstration, we'll continue configuring Enterprise Vault by setting up the storage and sharing levels. The two sections in this demonstration are the configuration of the Enterprise Vault storage, followed by the configuring of the sharing level. The first thing that we want to do is to create the Vault Store group. So we'll open up our administrative console. Once our administrative console is open, to create the new Vault Store group, we have to go to the Vault Store group section. So we'll click on Vault Store groups. We'll select New, and we want to select Vault Store group. This will start the Vault Store group wizard. So we click our Next button to start the wizard. And the first thing that it prompts us for here is going to be a name for our Vault Store group. And we're going to name our Vault Store group EV Server Group. We also are going to have a description for our Vault Store group. And that description is going to be storage on EV Server. We can go ahead and click Next. And it prompts you for the location of your SQL Server. Now, it assumes that you want to install your Vault Store database on the same SQL Server that you installed your directory database on. So therefore, it's already come preset for DC SQL, which is where we installed the directory database in an earlier demonstration. So we'll just go ahead and accept that default and click Next. Then we are required to specify the primary file group location on the SQL Server. So like we had done in earlier demonstrations, we've created a separate drive and a separate folder for all of our Enterprise Vault databases. So we expand our D drive, we select our Enterprise Vault databases, we can then click OK. Then we need to specify the location of our transaction log. So we'll go ahead and click Browse. And again, as a best practice, we want to have our transaction logs and databases on different drives. So we create a separate folder on the E drive. So we expand that, and then we select the transaction logs folder that we've created. Then click OK. And then that takes us on to the next dialog box as part of the wizard, which gives you a summary of what the configuration settings that we selected. And then when we click the Next button, it shows you that it's creating the new Vault Store group and the fingerprint database. Remember, there is one Vault Store group related to one fingerprint database, so that gets created. Then it comes back and says that the Vault Store group and fingerprint database were successfully created, are now ready for use. Now, just having the Vault Store group doesn't do us any good. We need to create that Vault Store to go inside the Vault Store group. So we'll go ahead and start that process. So we'll click our Next button, and that starts the new Vault Store wizard. So we click the Next button, and we need to specify a name for our Vault Store. The first Vault Store is going to be Corporate Compliance, and our description is going to be all journaled mail items. In the lesson, we went through and talked about the issue of why you might decide to have one Vault Store group for your journal and one Vault Store group for your mailboxes, and we have decided that that's the best solution for the environment that we're currently demonstrating. So we'll go ahead and we'll click Next then. Once again, it assumes that you want the Vault Store database where the fingerprint database was created. And I go through and find the locations of the database file again. So I click Browse. Again, it will be the D drive and the Enterprise Vault databases folder. We click our OK button. We go and browse for our transaction log location. That's again going to be on our E drive in our EV transaction logs folder. We click our OK button. Then we can click Next. Now the next step in the Vault Store creation is specifying our setting for the Remove Safety Copies. We had different values for the Remove Safety Copies. You could select None, or you could select After Backup, or you could select After Backup and Immediately for journaling, or Immediately after immediately. And in our particular example, we would typically, for a journal, select the Immediately After Archiving. So we'll go ahead and select that. Then we go ahead and click our Next button. And it gives you a summary of the configuration settings that you have selected for your Vault Store creation. So I can go ahead and click Next. It shows you that it is creating the Vault Store database. And now it says that it successfully created the Vault Store. Its SQL Server database is now available, and it shows you the database name there. Now again, we still cannot provide storage until we've created a Vault Store partition. So we start the Vault Store partition wizard. We click our Next button, and you can see that by default it uses the name of the Vault Store, and then it appends to the end of that a PTN and a number. So we can live with that naming convention, so we'll select that. And then it also automatically populated the description. It has the partition of Vault Store Corporate Compliance. And then we also have create the new partition state. We talked about in the lesson that there's 3 different states a partition can be in. It can be open, it can be closed, or it can be ready. Since this is the first partition that we're creating and we wish to start archiving, we're going to create the partition in its open state. Do remember that you can only have one partition open in any given instance in a Vault Store. So we go ahead and click Next. And then it asks us for what type of storage we're going to choose for this Vault Store partition. And we're going to go ahead and select NTFS volume. Also remember that if you selected some other storage type, the follow-on dialog boxes would be based upon the storage type that you have selected. But in our example, we're just going to use an NTFS volume. So we click Next. That NTFS volume is going to be on our E drive. So we'll select the E drive. And then we can go ahead and click Next. Then it comes up and asks you for the path that you wish to use for the partition. And we can browse to where that particular path would be. We're going to go ahead and let it go to the default location. And then also here for NTFS, and again, this is going to be based upon the type of storage location you selected, what different options you have available. For NTFS, we only have 2 choices. Does the device perform data deduplication, or does the device perform data compression? And the particular device that we're storing it to does not do either one of those, so we will leave them unchecked. We go ahead and click Next. And this is where we want to check the connectivity test, because if we are going to be doing sharing or anything like that, we want to guarantee that we have a good connectivity that's going to support the bandwidth for our single instance storage, which we'll talk about later in the demonstration. So I'll click my Run Test button. The test runs, and I come back with my connection rating. All 3 connections are good. So I'll go ahead and continue on with the installation or creation of the new partition. So we go ahead and click Next. And then we have the option of configuring the partition rollover. For this particular example, we're not going to create that at this point. We will come back in a later demonstration and show you how to set up and configure partition rollover. So just go ahead and say Not Enabled and then click Next. Then you can also specify if you wish to add security to the partition and have it automatically be created with the access control list that corresponded with the access control list in the mail system. So we'll go ahead and accept the default and click Next. Then it asks you how you want to determine if the particular item has been backed up. So for our Remove Safety copy, if we had selected one of the options for After Backup, how's the system going to know that that particular item has been backed up? And we can either use the archive attribute, or we could have a trigger file. And you'll need to know what your backup mechanism is going to be, so you'll know whether or not it shifts the archive attribute, or if it actually creates a trigger file. For our particular backup, it does in fact modify the archive attribute, so we'll leave the default and click Next. Then we can specify how we're going to perform collection. We're not going to configure that at this time. We have a later demonstration for backing up and restoring, and we'll show you configuring collection in that demonstration. So we can go ahead and click Next. Once again, we get a summary of all the different configuration settings that we have created for the new partition. So we can go ahead and click Finish. It tells you that we did successfully create the Vault Store partition and it's now ready for use. So we can go ahead and click Close. And now we just want to go through and verify that that particular Vault Store group, Vault Store, and Vault Store partition have been created. So we'll come up and we'll expand our Vault Store groups. And we can see that we have our EV server group under our Vault Store groups. We can then expand our EV server group and see that we have our corporate compliance Vault Store under our EV server group. And if we select our corporate compliance Vault Store, we can see that we have in fact created the corporate compliance partition. Now for our particular environment, since we have created one separate Vault Store for all of our journal items, we're going to create a different Vault Store for all of our mail items so that we can set up sharing later in the demonstration. So we'll go ahead and go back to our EV server group. We will right click and select New. And then we will select Vault Store. That's going to launch the new Vault Store wizard again. This is the same wizard that we had when we went through the steps of creating the Vault Store, creating the Vault Store group, followed by the Vault Store. So we can just go ahead and click Next. It asks us a name for the new Vault Store, and we're going to call it our Information Management Vault Store. And then for our description, it'll be for all of our archived mail. So this is going to be all the mail that's not in the journal, which is in our Corporate Compliance Vault Store. So we go ahead and click Next. Once again, it's going to be looking for the SQL Server location for the Vault Store database. And then I've skipped the steps of browsing to the location and already specified the location for the database and transaction logs here. So I can just go ahead and click Next. And again, for the remove safety copies, since this would be for our mail, normally we would leave it at after backup so that we would not remove the safety copies until the Exchange environment had been backed up. But because we're using this for demonstration purposes and we want to show you what happens when users delete their items, we're going to go ahead and change the remove safety copy from the after backup to the immediately after archive option. Then we'll go ahead and click Next again. Once again, we get our summary of all the settings that we have configured for the Vault Store. So we go ahead and click Next to accept those. It's creating that new Vault Store information management. Once that's been created, we get our pop-up that hopefully says that it was successfully created, shows you the name of the database and the SQL Server that it's located on. And if we continue on, it'll prompt us that we need to create the new Vault Store partition, and it will go ahead and take us through the partition creation for the new Vault Store we just created. So I go ahead and click Next. We're going to accept, again, the default name and description. And once again, because we only have currently one partition in this Vault Store, we want to make sure that it does open up in an open state so it's ready to start archiving items and receive items. So we go ahead and click Next. It is going to be an NTFS volume again. So I click Next. I'm going to place it on the E drive, just like I did for the other Vault Store. And then I'll click Next. And then it comes up and requests the path that you wish to use for the Vault Store partition. Once again, we'll accept the default. And this NTFS volume does not do deduplication or compression. So we'll leave those two options unchecked and click Next. Once again, we have our test for our connectivity. So we click the Run Test button. And once we get back the results, we can view it here, but also notice that we do have a report button. So I could click on the report button to see it in more detail. And you can save the report to a clipboard and copy it off to some other location if you want to kind of keep a history of your connectivity tests. We're not going to do that, so we'll just go ahead and click OK. And then we can click Next. Once again, we'll configure partition rollover in a later demonstration. We will accept the default option for the access control lists and click Next. We will again use the archive attribute from our backup utility, so we can click Next. Once again, we'll wait until we get to the backup and recovery lesson to look at configuring collection. So we can just accept the default of none and click Next. We have our summary of all of our settings that we have specified for the creation of our new partition. So we can go ahead and click Finish. It tells us that it did successfully create the new Vault Store partition. It's ready for use. I can go ahead and click Next. And I now have the Information Management Vault Store with its associated Vault Store partition inside of it. For the next section of our demonstration, we're going to look at configuring the sharing. When you configure sharing for a Vault Store group, you set a sharing level for each Vault Store within the Vault Store group. The sharing levels determine the boundaries for our single instance storage sharing within the group. A Vault Store group can therefore contain one or more sharing boundaries. Each sharing boundary contains one or more Vault Stores that share the sys parts that result from the Enterprise Vault single instance storage model, which we discussed in the lesson. In this environment, we have chosen to set up the two Vault Stores in a single Vault Store group. So to take advantage of our optimized single instance storage, we're going to configure the sharing level to share within group. As you can see here, the default sharing level when you create a Vault Store is the share within Vault Store. So to set up the sharing, we'll come over here and click on our EV server group, and we'll select the properties. From the properties of our Vault Store group, we will go to the Sharing tab. Once again, you can see that each one of the individual Vault Stores are shown in a list and their current sharing level, which is the default share within Vault Store. Since we want to change that to share within group, we'll come down and click on our Configure Sharing button. This opens up the Configure Sharing wizard, shows us our three different options for sharing: share within group, share within Vault Store, or no sharing. So we can go ahead and click Next. And here we have the two different options of having all the Vault Stores have the same sharing level, or we could customize sharing and go to each individual Vault Store and determine the sharing level for each individual Vault Store. We want all of our Vault Stores to have the same sharing level, so we'll come up and select that we wish to share within group. So we can click on our drop down, we select the share within group option, then we can go ahead and click Next. Once again, because we are configuring sharing, we want to make sure that not only do we have good connectivity within the items within each individual Vault Store, but we also want to make sure we have good connectivity between the Vault Stores. So I'll go ahead and click my Run Test button again. And everything came back good, so I'll go ahead and click Next. It gives us a summary of our settings and to verify that this is what we want and to let us know that everything was changed. So go ahead and click Finish. And then once it's all done, we can click Close. And we can click OK. And you can see that now in the Enterprise Vault Administration Console that the sharing type has been updated for each of the Vault Stores that are in the EV server group. And that brings us to the end of this demonstration.